Hey loves, I was having a conversation earlier with a friend of mine about some of the content around narcissistic relationships, and they were having a really hard time with something that a few people have said about, the narcissist not being human, and, you know, you were dealing with somebody who's like not a person, and I agree. I often cringe when I hear these things because it does sound very objectifying and very dehumanizing, and we don't want to do that. However, I think sometimes these things that are being said are missing a lot of context because something I had to realize over time is that when I was interacting with the most narcissistic person I've experienced in my life, um, it didn't feel like a human interaction. And it's hard to understand that at first, especially when we operate from a deeply empathic and compassionate place. Like we kind of assume that other people do that as well. And it's very hard to take the blinders off and understand that not everyone operates that way. It can make for a feeling of, like the world is much more of a scary and untrustworthy place than we initially thought. We might also feel guilty by assuming that another person does not have the capacity for an in depth, empathic connection with us. So, yes, narcissistic people are humans. They have doubts and fears and joys and dreams, just like the rest of us do. They even do have a certain amount of capacity for empathy. Oftentimes, they know exactly how you're feeling or how they're making you feel. They just don't do the part that, would help you feel better. These people also tend to be pretty wounded and have a high amount of shame, which is a very human thing to feel. However, when it's so great, there is this personality construct that gets erected in order for that person to not have to deal with that shame or feel vulnerable around others. You don't actually get to relate to or know their authentic, vulnerable self. What you get to know is their construct, right? It's this oftentimes beautifully and meticulously crafted persona and way of being that's highly charismatic, it's highly magnetic, but it's not really reflective of who they really are at the core. In a lot of ways, it's a big defense mechanism. That's why it's so disorienting when you feel like you really get to know this person and then all of a sudden you move in with them or you get married to them or you start a business together and they do this whole 180, this whole other side comes out. Well, sweetheart, that's because you weren't actually getting to interact with I guess, yeah, like an intact, like vulnerable human. It's like I always say it's like a program. It's like a computer program, like this fake, well, they call it the mask. That's what you are interacting with. You're not having a human to human connection. You're having a human to false persona connection. And furthermore, when you are connecting with a narcissist, you are not even in the room to them. Now, it took me a long time to understand this. At one point, I was able to get into a space of curiosity. Even though what was unfurling was extremely painful, there was a moment where I started listening to the people around me that told me this is what was going on. I stopped feeling guilty about perceiving this person as highly narcissistic and began to kind of look at things from a different perspective versus, the seat that's like inside the chaos. And, when we are in that seat with all of the gaslighting and all of the manipulation and all of the lies and all of the back and forth and all of the blame shifting, like if you've been there, it is so confusing. Like you just don't know what's going on. But there comes a point where once you kind of start to understand when the cognitive dissonance breaks and you can just even just move out of that vortex for just a moment, like even just a little bit, things kind of start to take a different shape. And one of the things that I saw was that this person, no matter if he was seemingly being kind to me or being hateful towards me, it didn't really matter how I felt. It didn't matter how I would respond. It didn't really matter how I would react, if I would receive him. It just didn't matter. Like this person was speaking to himself through me. Like I was nothing but a mirror, just there. Like I could have, like I thought about like, okay, there's, because you know what happens when you're dealing with a narcissist, you start to be like, okay, well, if I respond this way, this is going to happen. If I respond this way, this is going to happen. If I respond this way, and you end up feeling frozen, you feel trapped because you know that like there is a trap set for every way that you respond. And then once you see that, it's like, oh, honey, like whatever I do, the same thing's going to happen. Like this person has an agenda. And no matter how I feel, or no matter how I move in this, like I'm just a pawn in their game, in their agenda. And that's what all of the experts say about this dis-ease is that they have this like, what is it called? Like main character energy. Like they are the main character in the world and everybody else is just an object. Like you are objectified. So on the flip side of what we were talking about, they are not actually relating to you like you're a human with feelings, with your own needs, with your own dreams, with your own desires. You are being related to as an object. You are literally a chess piece. One of the most enlightening things that I heard after my experience was that this person told a very good mutual friend of ours that I was a level in their Jedi training that they needed to conquer in their life. That's all I was to them. I was a level in a game. I was some sort of final boss. That's it. And it's true. I never felt cared for after that. After the betrayal, there was never a, hey, how are you doing? None of that. There were some nice words that sounded nice, but it was never a conversation. They were having a conversation with themselves and maybe offering some platitudes to make themselves feel good about themselves, but I could see it. Like there was no actual care or kindness there. That's very typical and common. So this is what they mean when they say you're not really dealing with a human. Like, I think there are better ways to say that. You're not dealing with a humane dynamic. You're not having a human-to-human conversation where both people's needs and feelings and expressions and concerns are being taken into consideration. Like that's just not there. So it is a very inhumane experience. They are coming from an inhumane place and they actually don't see you as human. You are objectified. So I wanted to clear that up for anybody who feels very allergic to some of the harsh language that is out there around narcissists not being real people. Like, yeah, there are, and we often have a lot of compassion for them and the pain that they're in. And some of them are able to get help and, you know, go on to try to understand how their behavior affects people and to be better people. And like, I admire and respect that so much. And at the same time, if you get stuck there and you're just like hoping that this person's going to come around, like more often than not, they don't. And more often than not, like you think that, you know, they're seeing you, they're understanding you, or like at some point they're gonna get it. You're rooting for them, but all the while, like you're just a chess piece in their game to help them feel good about themselves. And you don't want to be that for anybody, and that will mess you up. And that's why so many survivors of this experience take such a long time to heal, because it is a deep and very confusing objectification by someone that you loved and trusted. So go out there and find people in your life who do relate to you, human to human, and it'll get much better. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you in the next one.